Do I need to be quiet or?
Nah. All right. Let me get this. Make sure this is running. All right, we're live. So today we have BeastBound with Team Endpoint. You are the performance coach. How are you doing today?
I am doing quite well, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Let me scoot this over just a little bit. There we go. All right. So, RLCS announcement just dropped. What are your thoughts?
Where do I start? There's a lot going on. I'm gonna just be honest. I don't think I'm too happy. This is not what we were waiting for. Uh, Severe downgrade on most like feats of RLCS, I would say. Most of the pros aren't happy. Most of the organizations aren't happy. The initial like it's been out for like an hour. Has it been
Uh,
hour and a half now?
Maybe.
It I Yeah, I've yet to see like someone that really was able to spin it positively, and that's I think that's saying something.
Yeah, the only thing I do like about it is the expansion of the amount of people getting paid.
Yeah. I mean that is a good thing in general. To have more people be able to win prizes is very good, but again, the way they've distributed it, I've already seen numbers. I think I saw someone post about the last South America qualifier where they had 56 or 52 teams participating, where now the top 64 teams will win cash prizes, which means people are going to sign up, not even play, and still win prizes. And at that point, I do like to find a balance between supporting a wider frame and actually rewarding those who put the effort into it. It should still feel like a prize. I don't think RLCS is for participating trophies, but that's my personal opinion there. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit large. Like I think if they just took the top teams and like just cut it in half, except for maybe APAC and SSA. Because like top 64, like those are the people that are really starting to just like try and strive for it, and actually putting in effort. I don't know enough about the OCE, the or the Mina scene to know just like how deep it runs. Uh, but like that's still giving the bubble scene support and
I think this goes
value
beyond
to
bubble scene.
players. Yeah.
64 in a region like MENA. MENA has a very, very high top, and I think one of the positives I'm very happy about is the two MENA spots. The fact that Sub-Saharan Africa's got a spot for World Championship as well as just majors. That's good. But 64 teams to receive prizes in MENA, I think so. Like for me, I think there will be 64 teams in MENA, but the cutoff for Team 64 will probably somewhere in Champion.
Wow.
Um, so I do think there's going to be champion players in MENA getting a top 64 place. And I think for South America with 64 again as well. Yeah, I mean, there'll be golds. You can be silver and sign up and probably make money of it. And I'm all for rewards, but if that's going to cost the top team some as well. There's
Yeah.
obviously organizations that want to be interested as well. So I think for organizations, this was not the sustainable option.
That's the interesting thing is they said they wanted to focus on open competition and sustainability, which I feel like they really leaned into the open competition side. They really didn't do much for the sustainability side of it.
So I think with sustainability, they were talking about their own sustainability. I'll be brutally honest with the position Rocket League's in right now. Rocket League hasn't had any major updates. There is no new game modes, nothing that
Mm-hmm.
really drives new players there. So I think with lowering the incentive for prize money, they could drive new players towards a game like Rocket League. One of the things that I did see as well in the announcement is that in the broadcast announcement, the English broadcast will be on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, the familiar, and in Fortnite Legends Landing Island. So again, Fortnite is getting more
Yeah.
coverage than Rocket
Yeah.
League game itself. So I do think somewhere in these plans, Epic Games has made it so that like Fortnite is going to start feeding back into Rocket League, and for me that is a hopeful start because I do hope that more people will join Rocket League, the interest grows, more people, to participate. But yeah, I don't know if this was the right step. We're gonna have to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this makes sense for an esports the size of CS:GO, not the esports that Rocket League is at right now. I think that's
No.
the like CS:GO. I could see these numbers making sense as far
Mhm.
as like the placements and prize pool, etc. But for Rocket League, like we aren't 20 years old with people that have been playing this since they were 5 years old. Uh,
Yeah.
that's where I think they're approaching this as if it's a bigger esport than it is.
I think again they're taking like a page out of Fortnite's approach,
Hmm.
and it's translating quite poorly. I think from most of the reactions we've had so far, it's very clear that this is not what people were hoping for. With this long an
Yeah.
off season, you'd expect there to be conversations. You'd expect pros to have been, like what would you like to see? Is there any notes from like who is going over the team? There was the recent update that Blast is going to take over. That's sick because they do the stuff for CS:GO as well. From what I've seen, their events are incredible, so that could be really good. But then I think that they're trying to push like an agenda on a still relatively niche game, and let's be honest, everyone kind of knows Rocket League can become large. It is a one of a kind of game, but it's got 5 years to go. It's got 5 years to go before it gets there. It's too niche still, and the positives that you can see from like a CRL or universities taking a massive interest into Rocket League. Because mainly the lack of shooting is
Hmm.
especially for American schools a very very current thing, but most schools like that, and racing and FIFA are alternatives. But Rocket League is such a niche thing. There is nothing quite like it. So to make it this wide early on would make very little sense. I do think it's going to drive more people to the actual events.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if it's going to bring the sustainability that they're currently looking for, but
Yeah. Do we have any word on if there's any invitations or is it straight open qualifiers for everybody?
I mean, I can only assume they're not going to remain. I kind of think they'll still put top eight in the Swiss stage.
Hmm.
So the way it's set up is the double elimination all the way to top 16, and then top 16 does the Swiss stage into the single elimination top eight.
Hmm.
Uh, I do think top eight teams will be put in the Swiss stage, but there's no confirmation on this whatsoever. So there might be some golds playing top team vitality on day one of open qualifiers.
Yeah. Like I'm all for like giving the bubble scene, like the 32 through 16, like a chance to play the top eight and like making the top 32 play the top 64 just to like ladder that experience. But the way brackets have been done in the past, I'm sure you're familiar with the term death bracket.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I mean,
group of death or like yeah.
yeah, like if you have four teams that are all day three potential and they get put in the same group, if one day they just happen to peak, like let's say us, Genji, Luminosity, and whatever Hey Bros team is in there.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
Hey Bro peaks and beats Genji, and then now it's Luminosity and M80, and we've got to knock one of each other out. Oh, I
It's
don't know
yeah.
how you could be happy as an org if that happens. And with how bad the seeding has been year after year, I mean, I can recount when like all the team like I think there was I think eight or nine groups, and there were three groups with four rank A teams or rank X teams, and there was like I think two or three groups with a single rank X team in it. And it's like, man, I feel sorry for those teams because
Yeah.
it's like,
I understand seeding's hard as well, so you can't even really
yeah,
be angry at anyone. How do people? What do you base the seeding on?
yeah,
Individual performance, recent results, how the recency bias is big,
hmm,
and there's a new team. What do you do with them? There's been some transatlantic transfers,
oh
especially on
yeah,
the ATS. How do you rate those? How do you
yeah,
match that? Are preseason tournaments going into the mixer? If so, which one? Like
hmm,
there's no way to do an accurate seeding, and the random effect can be massive. Yeah, again, from my personal experience, I used to be very mad about this as well. I kind of was able to give it a spot, like it's part of the game now.
yeah,
But the very first event I did was when I was coaching F16. I was invited to Gamers 8.
hmm,
Um, Massive event for me, huge opportunity for me to show what I could do with a team that was young, full of potential. This was with the twins in Basel at the time, and we were put in a group with Semper, so a very solid
hmm,
European team, Face, and Furia. So day one went really well. We beat Semper and we beat like Face. So it was this incredible high. In the second day, we met Furia and Face again because we lost to Furia and then we lost to Face in the others as well. So day two we were out immediately, and I remember looking at the other groups and being like, how I'd wish to be there. We'd still be in, and Face
hmm,
ended up being a top four team. Furia actually won the entire event, and I felt so gutted that we were out at that point. Um, Based on just the random group seating, because this
hmm,
was an all invite only, the first ever event of its kind, and there is nothing you can do about this. So to have um a, a format that has this little events, let's be honest, because there's only two majors before the
hmm,
World Championships, with such a large break after the major as well, and have it all be relatively dependent on what is going to be seeding, is a scary prospect for both players as well as organizations. So sustainability wise, who are they sustaining? Yeah, I can only see them sustaining themselves with this format.
yeah. And I get you. They maybe needed to cut back, like on production. Like yesterday, Twitter was filled with a bunch of casters saying it's been great, uh, but at the same time, it feels like there are some really obvious choices to make it sustainable that at least haven't gotten announced yet. Like if they're doing invites, like I think it's clear in each region to at least the top 8, if not top 16 teams are. Uh EU may be a little bit less, but there's at least a clear top 8 in every region. Uh
Or at least contenders for top eight, yeah.
yeah. Uh and that's where like again, just with how bad seeding is at such a large scale, especially if they use random seeding, uh, and they're going to have to a certain extent, just because you can't guess what teams are, especially if there's 1,000 signups. Like I think what was the amount of teams that signed up for like the last qualifier? Uh, I think like in North America it was around like 600.
Yeah, it's gonna be some insane stat.
And I imagine EU's probably closer to
Similar.
400 just due to population difference. But I imagine it's similar.
Let's see, there was so for the 2023 Fall Open, which was the beginning of the previous year. That's what most people do. Partake. There was 465 European teams.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, that's a lot of teams that get random seedings, and
Yeah,
it, that's scary as an org. Like
as a
why?
player, as an org, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially like yes, you can have like great teams and stuff like that, but when that seeding's so random, there is that chance, and I feel like it pumps up the salaries of great players even more and lessens that middle tier even more because it makes that middle tier even that much more of a risk.
I don't even necessarily think it's going to pump up the salaries of the top tier players because like if there is no like if it is like random-ish seeding wise, especially for the
Mhm,
first event, I could see top tier players lose games to a lesser team.
mhm.
Underdog stories they
Yeah.
happen. We're gonna see some random team pop off and they're gonna do really well. They're going to charge 17 million every day to play for an organization. The organization pays for it, and then they never show up again. It's especially with well, no, yeah, you're as a coach, you're going to be familiar with the element of how big mental can be in a game of Rocket
Mhm.
League. A good day is going to be worth so much money now. How is the investment going to be for that? And there's just so many question marks with this format, with how they've set it up, the lack of communication. There's so much more to be done here. The fact that it's even the announcement itself after this long, it's been 149 days, I think.
Mhm.
I've seen a tweet. There's 149 days. 149 days have gone by, and we've had a couple of like small teasers, like, oh yeah, we're planning on bringing the age get down. There's been some, outrage about that, or people
Mhm.
not agreeing with that. There's been people, you had the blast announcement. The fact that we don't have even just like a phase, even someone that's like, all right, let's present this. No one knows who to talk to.
Yeah.
Who do we go to? What's the point of contact? How do we or how do organizations how does anyone step up and ask like just what is the plan? I want to know who designed this, why this was the plan, and if there is a reason for it, if there's a valid answer, sure, of course. But like I feel like there's just not enough information available to the public, and it's frustrating, and it's honestly a little scary as well.
Not even to the public, but to like the people inside like the pro scene, like the people who are investing in putting teams together. It's like the pro Discord like didn't find out about it until what, yesterday? Like, oh hey, yeah, we are announcing it this week.
Yeah,
And then even though they say they're announcing it, like we still don't know where majors are or when. We have a
I could see
month.
them.
We have
Yeah.
a month of when they go, okay, it's going to happen in March. That's a lot of weekends that it could be on that people have to plan and
Yep.
coordinate flights, get visas taken care of.
Well,
You
and,
know,
and boot camps, and
yeah.
yeah, no, 100%. The communication has been visible at best. There's so much
Yeah.
left to be desired. And, I can't even really blame like the developers or the people because they've been forced to work on other
Hmm.
events as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, well, for someone whose livelihood depends on it, it is just scary to see it, being treated like this for
Hmm.
someone that doesn't, uh, compete, or as someone
Hmm.
that's like, oh, I'm just a fan. Oh, I'm sad. There's only two events. There's only like two opportunities for us to prove ourselves or for us to
Hmm.
to show our worth. Imagine an American football season where there's only two games. How scary would that be as coach?
Yeah.
One bad game means so much more there. So
Hmm.
I don't even yeah. I could think of like in my head, right? It makes sense. I can think of 7 different formats that would make more sense in a minute. Like, oh, just give us, 15 events, make the prize pool smaller,
Hmm.
like make more events and reward the top, half what you're doing. Make the events worth less, but you accumulate points over those events. So instead of the 3 events, it'd be
Hmm.
7, 8, 9, maybe 10 events. It's more like a league. Then there's a big finale at the end that determines who's going to go to the major. So
Yeah.
even the run up to the major will feel like it is a world championship, and
Yeah.
that's already big. But the way this is like, oh, event one was awful. Unlucky, we're out. There is no chance of us we're going to have to consistently beat the number one seed if we want to
Yeah. We'll have
get
to.
through now.
Oh, it's like we ended up fighting the team that won it and then the team that got second place in our bracket. And it's like, well, now we have to beat both of them just to maybe get top 4 if this
Yeah.
other team does poorly, you know. It, yeah, I get that you want the best teams, but with how close everything is nowadays, it's and not even close, but also like playstyle differences. It's like to a certain extent, it's rock paper scissors when it comes to team play styles, and so that plays into a factor as well.
Yeah, not to mention the drain that
Mhm.
is the 6 back-to-back weekends if there's no
Yeah,
invites. If you're top level, if you're consistently making all the events, you have open qualifiers, then a Swiss stage, then an additional top 8 single elimination event, and
yeah,
the fact that in my head the single elimination event sounds like the least stressful, and that's the one that determines the most. That's
yeah,
the scary part as well. This
yeah. Like,
is just question marks.
yeah, I think that's the big thing is like there just needs to be even more communication. Like, are there going to be invites? How are they handling seating? I think this is if there was ever a year that we needed the RL Players Association to exist, this is definitely the year.
Yeah, really hoping that that takes off. Still, I'm invested.
So I guess with all of that, talking about the stress and complication of esports, I think that segues nicely into. So what does a performance coach do? Like, how do you help players handle such a difficult situation that uh, not only necessarily lackluster or suboptimal formats, but even in those single eliminations, like there's a lot of pressure on them. How do you handle that? How do you help them? What exactly falls under your job description?
Uh, Let me preface this by saying, like, there's quite a few definitions for performance coach. For example, League of Legends, I know that a performance coach is often more of a mechanical coach, as we would call it. For me, performance is the all-around increasing of performance. So I am looking at all the elements in the team. For myself, that means I look at the mental side. I look at the effect that the events have. I try and maintain the right atmosphere for the players on the event itself, as well as the more mechanical side of the coaching. So I analyze the gameplay. I look at like what the optimal way of playing is. How can we look at progress in general? Do the players understand how to look for this? Nutrition, any sleep kind of scheduling, anything that can impact performance in general is to me interesting as a coach. So I think for most performance coaches in Rocket League, you're mainly looking at the analysis into this can be done better. But for me specifically, it's a bit of a wider variety of things that I look at.
Okay, so you take more, not just okay, hey, you need to hit the shooting packs more. It's okay, what's your mental state and how is that affecting it? You take a more holistic approach, than necessarily hey, just hit training packs more.
Oh yeah, 100%. My coaching experience is, well, I've been a coach for like almost 12 years now.
Okay, what did you
Almost
coach
half my.
before? What did you coach before Rocket
I
League?
used to coach track and field, so that's where I started. At the time, I was competing for like Dutch national championships, and I was asked to help out with the youth initially. So I
Mhm.
did the course to become an assistant coach, then head trainer, as it was called, and then sorry, no, just personal. No, they called it. Sorry, they called it trainer first, and then head trainer, head coach for a couple of years. And I did that for quite some time until COVID hit, and that's when I made the switch to Rocket League. So yes, the holistic methods, just in general, like how does one get better? Everything around how does one get
Mhm.
better is what interests me.
Okay. So who would you say are like your bigger influences when it comes to your coaching style?
That's actually a really good question. I don't really know if I have many influences. It's kind of always been this thing that I did as a hobby. Um,
Or not
and
necessarily Rocket League in general, but just like coaching as uh
where I've learned from.
yeah. Like who's a coach that like you worked with that made a big impact and was just like, okay, that's the type of coach I want to be no matter what it is that I'm coaching.
Stupidly enough, I've actually had more coaches that I was like, I don't want to be like that as a coach, which
Mhm,
kind of made me do my own research into coaching and made me
mhm,
see elements of coaching that I was way more interested in. My old track and field coach, for example, he was quite the simple man. He was just like, oh, you just got to run quicker, just run quicker, just do this. And he was just, he'd be
mhm.
loud and just screaming, and it was good for hype for some people. So that's definitely something I've learned from it, I guess. But I really wanted to not be like him.
Mhm. He sounds like the
But
stereotypical friend coach in Rocket League. Yeah,
yeah,
do better.
oh, just hit your flip reset, man. Just do it. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. I mean, stupidly enough, most of the actual like progression based elements that I've picked up on as a coach came from my time studying. I used to study to become a nurse and a physical therapist. I've never completed either of the two studies, granted.
Mhm,
Um, but in there, I learned quite a few things about human body, how it worked, brain, how it worked, muscles, how they work, and more importantly, how regenerative practices work. So, from those insights into progress, into performance and building on performance, I learned quite a few things, including some psychological tricks, including part of the mental side. Right? How do you deal with someone that's been sick for such a long time that it feels hard for them to want to improve anymore, like stuff like that. There's all sorts of, well, like you mentioned, holistic practices, and I've based a lot of it on those. So in a way, it's never really been coaches that inspired me to become a better coach. It's um, well, doctors or professors or teachers, and yeah, not really coaches that
hmm,
inspired me to become the coach I am today. And I'll be very honest, I've always been a bit of a lone wolf when it comes to coaching. I've worked alongside some coaches, be it brief, but never been overly interested in kind of sharing because I still, and I'll be honest about this, I'm just really ambitious about it myself. I
yeah.
want to become, the best, the better, the best version I can be. So, uh, in that like ambition, there's almost no space for others, which
Mhm.
granted has probably cost me a few positions as well. But yeah,
Yeah, I
we
think
learn.
yeah, that's one of the interesting things about coming up, just like specifically in my story, but coming up in Rocket League coaching. Uh, I don't know if you saw my video last year about systems in Rocket League. It was the one about like how to beat Gen G and K Corp. It was
Can't say I have, not.
yeah, it was bigger in the NA side of things. But I put that out and I had that's when Nick messaged me. He was just like, "Hey, like this is interesting. Let's talk about it." And the difficult thing when making that video, uh, I had talked with The Verge just a little bit, and he was just like, "You don't want to put too much out there that you give away all your secrets, but you need to put out enough that people can see you have something." And that was such a difficult line to walk. And I think that's one of the difficulties with finding good coaches uh, within the Rocket League space is if you don't know what you're talking about, a good coach is going to sound dumb. But if you do know what you're talking about, it may just sound different or like they have a different philosophy on it. And it makes it very difficult for coaches to be rated as well. I think that's something we talked about on the last podcast was it so many people base it off of results, but at the same time they're looking at placements, not necessarily the results of the coaching, and it's very hard to tell what has a coach actually done for a team.
100%.
So what is it that you think that you've done to, I guess, solidify your place and show that you have improved a team and that you deserve the coaching spots that you get?
Ooh, interesting. I like that question. What have I done to show it to the outside world? I'll be honest, this has been one of my like personal battles. So what you mentioned with like the video is something I've been trying to work on for a very long time. Again, I've never really quite been able to uh, publish anything that I'm both happy with knowledge wise and was also like, oh, this is not, everything all at once. So that's not something I've quite figured out yet.
I
What have
haven't
I done
figured that out
to?
either.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So don't worry. I'm still trying to figure out how to walk that line.
One day, one day. As for the other thing, I mean, I've been very consistent with my teams, and I think more than anything, stupidly enough, other than obvious results and placement, I think is what happens when I left teams. Often is a bit of a indicator as well. The very first team I got to coach in RLCS was at the time they approached the coaching platform I was on, a smaller platform at the time, and they were like, "We're looking for a coach that can help us out. It's APAC. We're new to RLCS. We want a coach that has a bit of experience." And none of the coaches really stepped forward, and I was like, "Hey, I'm down for a challenge. I don't know what this is." They presented themselves as a top 10 APAC team, and I was like, "All right, that's interesting." So. Hey, we might get some good results there. At the time, this was all before even like Liquipedia pages were given
Mhm.
to those kind of teams. So I didn't know much about them. I figured, hey, I'm here to learn and see, and if I get to participate in RCS, that's cool. So I got to coaching with them, and in the first four events, I did four events with that team. They got second, the very first uh, event, only losing to what is still in the region, pretty much the most dominant team that there has been with LCT and Maxu, the like two kind of like European influenced players in the region at the time. And we got second, top four, second. Those were the results. And now most people would be like, oh yeah, you joined the team, they were already top two, so they had this potential. And while I don't disagree with that, as the players still were fantastic players, I think they had the ability to do so, but were unable to reproduce it when I was not there. When I left them, even if they got another coach who I just not mention because I feel like that'd be
Yeah.
bad. Like they dropped in the standings. They got top six, top six, top eight, top four, top six, top six, or something like that. Like they just slowly fell down bit by bit, and that's kind of been a trend that's been there for most of the teams I've coached. So I guess that would be a better indicator. What have I done to show? I kind of struggle to answer the question other than that, though. I don't think I have many other indicators. It's not something I've really been worried about. For me, proving I deserve the spot is not something I have to prove to everyone. For me, it's
Mhm.
proving the relevant people I do it. And
Yeah.
that's maybe a different way to look at things, to be fair.
Yeah. And maybe not necessarily proving it for like the general public, because we all know how Twitch chat is with, oh, these guys look like plats. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, that's first killer. uh,
Yeah.
like that's it's a very interesting spot being a coach, because you are reliant on your players to a certain extent, uh, but at the same time, if you're doing your job, it shows. It's kind of like an audio engineer in a music venue. It's like you only really tell if they're not doing their job if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And a lot, I think also like the other thing that makes coaching such an interesting thing is, depending on the players, you may need a different type of coach. Like you have a Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. They were very systematic in the way they approached the game. And then you have who's coaching the Ravens right now? Let me look it up.
Harbaugh?
Yeah. Then you have John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. So the way if you took Jim Harbaugh and had him coach Tom Brady, and then you had Bill Belichick coach Lamar Jackson, both of those teams would be significantly worse. Just because Harbaugh's way of playing and designing their team strategy versus Bill Belichick, Lamar, you give a little less structure to, and Tom Brady, he's all about structure and just picking apart a defense with his big brain. Not to say that Lamar isn't a smart quarterback, but just his strength is more in his legs and mobility, and he just plays into that. Nothing wrong with it. I think they're probably going to win the Super Bowl because of it. But that's the other thing that I've noticed with discussions with other coaches is some are much more hands off, and then I'm on the system side of it, so I love to break everything down. And if I could find players that were complete brainiacs and loved memorizing patterns and stuff like that, like I'm much more that Bill Belichick, and I'm learning with Nick right now how to be that more John Harbaugh type and finding that right mix. So that's been something interesting with me as far as like my learning process as becoming a better coach. So what has been some of your experiences where you had a style or a preference in the way that you coach, and because of who you're working with, you had to learn something different to be the coach that they needed?
I guess the best example of this, other than some individual cases from like years ago, the best example for me for this was when I coached a team called Savage, which was Bluey's team. So I left APAC after a brief stint there for a couple of months. And I was kind of like hungry, ambitious. I wanted to go to the next team and prove myself. So I got a chance there through a mutual friend with some well, it was Compact, the Wolf, and Bluey at the time, and the team looked great on paper. Bluey, the DreamHack 2016 champion. He was just, he was massive in 2016, and he was still competing. And he picked up these two youngsters, and on paper, the team looked incredible. They'd worked together, and everything was nice. And I joined the team, and I was very impressed by the individual performances, and um, still I was quite unable to get them to work together. And at the time, what I didn't realize was that the team was um, dysfunctional on a much more mental level at the time, which was
Mhm.
something I hadn't really had to do with the APAC team. Whereas the APAC team, they used their timeout once in RLCS to make bird noises because they were so relaxed about it all. They were just having fun with it. So it was a completely different switch. So the mental switch between those teams was very severe for me, and I really struggled to keep up with that team. Also, given the kind of switch up in APAC top two to Europe, it was like a top 24 team, so like a day three team, and they made day three times, and they kept falling short of the actual main event. So that team needed so much more mental stimulation than I could provide at the time, and I had to learn great deal about this. And that for me was like an indicator that I should work on those. So I didn't even necessarily get the time to learn with that team. I stayed in contact with some of the players individually, but I set goals for myself then. That was a moment where, like, I made a mistake. I wasn't there for it. I didn't help the team to the extent I wanted to. How can I be better? I found some books. I did some self studying. The next team I got had a completely different issue, but I got to work on some elements, and I was quite happy with how I picked those up. And right now, I would actually say that's one of my better elements. I can look at a team or talk to a team, and I can pick up relatively quickly what it is they need and be flexible with how I apply my coaching. Often it being one of my first questions: what is it you're looking for from a coach? How can I help? That kind of. So definitely has been process, especially on the communication side, but also on what I'm comfortable coaching as. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So I would say across all of it, like who would you say not necessarily as coaches, but just like as people. Who's like the top three people that you would call like good friends that are in like the Rocket League coaching community?
Again, I find that a very tough kind of question to answer because of how much of a lone wolf I've always been. I've had contact with other
Mhm.
coaches. I've actually I don't want to not mention Nick to a certain extent because he gave me quite a few opportunities. He actually, pushed my name in the ring for some teams. I don't necessarily think I have any friends in, and this is again my bad, I guess. I never was there as a player. I didn't have the background, so I've a lot of like players that I can hang out with or people that I can enjoy a conversation with. But friend wise, I don't think I've had any friends over the rank of 1700, pretty much even. So um, maybe that's my definition of friend. There's definitely a lot of coaches I'm friendly with.
Yeah, more
Uh,
acquaintance, not necessarily.
yeah,
Yeah.
not day to day, week to week speaking. I have a lot of respect for Nick and what he's done. He's given me some opportunities, and I'm very grateful for those. I got to meet him. That was nice. A name like Poddy comes to mind, who I interact with semi regularly. More like, but like the people you'd congratulate when they get a cool opportunity. And
Hmm.
if someone says, "Oh, I've been coached by them," you'd be like, "Oh, all right, sounds good." But like not like, "Oh, that's my friend. This
Yeah.
coach is my friend." And I will just admit that is kind of what I'm looking to get better at. Getting my name out there. How do I prove to more people that it's not just the 1700s and 1800s? I can coach everyone. I'm
Hmm.
willing to say I can coach everyone. I want to try it. Almost like prove me wrong.
Hmm.
But that's a weird way of making friends as well. So I
Yeah.
will say I have no enemies as well. I don't think there's anyone that could say they don't they may dislike me from like what I've done, but not on a personal level as well.
Hmm.
So I'm very, very neutral to a lot of people, and that's
Yeah.
not a great position to be in if you're trying to work with people as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more interesting things, like in the competitive space. Like as I was coming up, like started coaching rank B teams and stuff like that. Like the change in relationships between some people from going from like we're friends to all right now we're fighting each other to try and get into RLCS and like that tension. And I think that's probably one of the more interesting things about esports specifically. I think it's less so in professional sports because there's much more stability in like the job and there's much more respect and like there's a lot more feeder programs. There's a culture of football, both American and European football, from 4 years old all the way up to people in their 40s and 50s. Like Rocket League hasn't been around long enough for that to necessarily develop. Uh, so that's probably, I guess, my next question is like when it comes to like those interpersonal relationships with players on the team, like somebody's leaving a team, how do you manage that from a performance coach's perspective?
If one particular player leaves,
Or yeah, like if one player leaves or like a duo wants to leave or like bringing on new players, like uh because to a certain extent we're dealing with kids all the time, or at least relative to us kids.
yeah.
uh how do you integrate them together, or find, even if they work together well in the field, how do you handle the like off field?
Especially when it comes to changing players, I feel like my relation to the team has always been a different level of professionalism than it is the players between themselves. The frustrations in the team I've always experienced to be a lot more, well, childlike as well, right? It's
Hmm.
the oh, you can't come to my birthday party kind of like. It's not
Hmm.
never like an active hate because you wouldn't team with each other in the first place if you're actively hating someone or actively disliking someone to that extent. So it's been I didn't like what they were. I didn't like their motivation today, or even if a player leaves, it's like, all right, well, we want to find someone else. It's never we hate this person, we severely dislike this person, and that's one. And I feel like that's also like a definitely important factor when it comes to finding a new player. Um, in smaller communities, and I've experienced it in, for example, OCE a lot. They actually do have like communities already based on what Rocket League pros are, elite high level Rocket League players. So I know there's like a footy club, like a soccer club in OCE where they play with mainly high ranked Rocket League players and some like in real life friends as well. But those communities exist in some places, but in a market such as Europe or NA, it's too big, right? We're looking for the best in all of NA. At
Hmm.
that point, it's very hard to like.
Yeah.
It can be 5 states over. It could be 3 streets away. So that difference is massive. So that role all the more becomes a kind of like we have this neutral beginning. We're looking for someone we don't dislike and do consider a good player, and from there we go. And my role as a coach has always been more professional, I think, as well. I'm not necessarily looking to become best friends with the team as well.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think I'm on again a negative side of that spectrum either. Like, I'm there to work for the team, with the team, if you will, for the team, if you allow me. But I'm not looking to become your friend. I'm looking to be the guy that's going to help you reach the top. And if you're working for that, then that's what we're doing. So it's a slightly different approach to,
I think it's a more stable approach. I think that
yeah,
when you become friends with anybody you work with, there is that chance of that friendship adding an extra 5% to performance, but there's also that chance of it costing that 5% of performance. Uh, and so I think that's an interesting position to be in, and also an interesting choice to keep it professional and like strictly professional. So do you
I,
see do
sorry, go on.
you or I was about to say, do you see like how like that adding in that friendship aspect could be better, but also it could cause more things that you have to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I like the if like it can be. It's not necessarily my first concern. I would
Mhm.
say it's a potential bonus if done correctly. But as a coach, especially, it's not my job to make the team good friends. It's
Mhm.
my job to make the team perform well or better or to the best of their ability. And if becoming friendly is important to that or has potential to pay out, then yeah, that could definitely weigh in. I don't know how you look at that element.
I definitely think more of the relationship that you have outside of it, building that trust, that trust transfers on the field, and that's where like that 5% per se can go either way. Because if something happens in the personal life, that trust can go away on the field as well. Uh, if that's one of the more infamous rumors within the NFL is there was beef between Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and that affected the way the plays were called, and that potentially affected the outcome of the game if they were true. And so I think that's where, if you do walk that line, I think it's to a certain extent easier to walk the line for certain people uh, that are more intellectually based than like a IQ versus EQ. I think coaches that are more EQ have a difficult time with that, but I think more analytical people like yourself and I, it's easier for us to just be like, hey, this just needs to happen, and there not be emotion attached to it.
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question on the way you phrase it. When you say this just needs to happen, do you, when you coach, and this is kind of like a question that's personal, so you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, um, do you always propose things in that way? Like, oh, this needs to happen? Or is it a kind of like joint decision between you and the team?
It depends on the team.
Okay.
Obviously, with a professional team, like it's becoming more that because most of the teams that I was coaching beforehand uh, come, like I said, they're rank B players, stuff like that. Uh, so like the decision making wasn't great. The mechanics were somewhat there. They maybe had a basic idea of rotations, stuff like this. But when it got to like more nuanced situations, instead of having a conversation about, well, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that, it was, hey, statistically, here's our best outcome, so we're going to do this. And then we do that, and then we'd upset teams. And that's where I kind of got my start going up through the ranks, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I still think there's a certain level of that that's more needed the lower you go. Like obviously, if we're talking to somebody in Grand Champ, we're probably not telling them what their camera settings should be. But if we're having a friend start the game, we're gonna be a lot more structured in, hey, just put your camera settings to this. Here should be your controller binds. Just trust me. And then as they become more, you kind of hand out a little bit more freedom in that because they've got the understanding of this is why we chose these camera settings. And so as they develop and they start to understand, okay, these are all the things I need to be able to see on the field for me to do what I want to do. Now they kind of have a basis for, okay, now I can kind of fine tune my camera settings to me personally. But there, you got to have that base structure there at the start.
Do you think you can still coach professionals on their understanding of things? Or is it just
Oh,
strategy and
absolutely.
stuff? Okay, yeah.
Not necessarily on understanding of things. Like obviously, pros know what they're doing to a very high degree,
Mhm.
but necessarily coordinating three people with different ideas of the game, or even variants on different ideas of the game. I think there's still a place for, instead of trying to find players to play the play style that you guys want. I think as this sport progresses, it's going to come to a point where we need to learn enough of different play styles so we can have an advantage in any matchup, or at least a neutral position that we're putting ourselves in, and not just rely on being to overcome our playstyle difference with our mechanics. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I do really like the idea of kind of continuing to work with professionals on their, like, even on their like understanding of things. And even as a coach, even if you analyze the game for like thousands of hours, I'd still feel like
Mm-hmm.
there's things you can learn to understand better. Even be it the personal side of things. Why did someone do this? What was their reasoning behind it? And then
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of why I like Rocket League as is. It's such a relatively new, like in CS:GO, it's very very clear cut. Like we
Mm-hmm.
tried this setup, didn't work. Why? Well, they had someone against it, or
Yeah.
and it's this mental almost chess game where the moves, while infinite or while exponentially large, do have a very clear rock paper scissors. But with Rocket League, the creative element, or the even the effect that a creative brain can have on a game is incredible. I think that the biggest example we can name in recent years clearly has been Zen. I'm sure everyone that has watched Rocket League enough will remember pretty much. I think it was a major event when Zen went up for an aerial. The ball ended up behind him, but he stayed in the air, and I think Alpha sniped him in midair for him to redirect it into the net.
Yeah.
And that to me was such like a not like a learning moment, but just an inspirational. Again, look at how creativity can be rewarded if you find the combination between knowledge and understanding, talent, or at least practice, either of the two, preferably both, and the right circumstances, and you get creative with those. How vast the opportunities are in Rocket League, and a play that, by again no means any coach would ever recommend, can be incredibly useful if performed at the right time. And that is for me what draws me to the competitive side of Rocket League, or at least the competitive side of coaching Rocket League, because I want to grow to a person that can be that can consistently coach people to get that level of creativity, and that's my goal. I want to get people there.
Yeah, I think
I want to be the best.
Yeah, I think also like one of the bigger differences is how creative are you off the field beforehand versus on the field. I think that's where really where my coaching style differs with a lot of coaches is I'm very much, these are likely interactions and these are likely chains of interactions. So let's play into these chains of interactions versus how can we optimize this one specific interaction. And so that's where like the creativity, there's a thousand different ways to play every situation, just about, to a varying degree. But when you start to chain or see patterns, that's where I think I describe this as like micro versus macro. Like if we look at the final goal of last season, like Zen taking that air dribble to pinch it off the ceiling to double tap it, I would consider that a lot of micro decisions. But if you look at the team structure, it's like, what was the game plan? Get Zen the ball with space and boost. And that's the macro, and how they position themselves enabled that. And so I think there's a much larger blend between the two than I think most people realize right now. And that there's much more room for creativity in that off the field pre-planning than what has been necessarily allowed with the season structure being so tight and not having space for teams to sit back and develop those.
Yeah, I mean, if you could if you could build a format that would suit your coaching style best, how would a year look like?
Oh, that's a good question. I would 100% love league play. As a coach, I think that's the format in and of itself that'll show the coach's impact more, because it's not just showing up on the day against a couple teams and having a hot streak. It shows consistency. It shows the variability that you're able to enable your players to do, and being like, okay, like make it as much my mind against the other coach's mind as much as it is player versus player. Like in tournament formats, it's for the most part, you've got to just be really good at what you do, and you don't have necessarily the time to sit down and prep for, hey, we're playing this team this week. Their tendencies are to do this, 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 and this. And so we're going to practice as if a team is going to do that, and that. And then the other team's doing the same thing, and it really becomes more of a chess match than it does, we've got our style and we're going to try to play our... Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. I would love the idea of a couple of divisions of
Mhm.
league play. I think like if you could set up Rocket League or RCS to a 3 point like a three tier league play with the highest tier having what essentially would be a Champions League kind of style
Mhm.
event which combines regions again. That would be incredible. Um, you could even make the World Championship a different format, and it would even show the difference between different regions better as well. How long would the league last? Would it be
Uh,
one league per year, or would you have several?
I would do probably like I would have like a larger. I would do like 2 or 3 open qualifiers, and like just take the top 8 teams from each of those qualifiers and just put them in, and then that
Hmm.
way, one, you kind of solve the death bracket problem with that, where it's like, oh, I got unlucky because 4 top 8 teams got in my bracket, and it's double elim. So one of
Yeah.
us was going home. Well, 2 of you made it all the way through. So now the next open qualifier, that's 8 teams that are no longer going to impact those death brackets. I think you do that 2 or 3 times,
Hmm.
you'll end up having the best teams make it all the way through into the league,
Yep.
even with random seeding. And then from there, you know, uh, I wouldn't know exactly how I would have the league, but I would probably do like 1 or 2 matches a week and then a playoff system. Very similar to like an NFL type thing.
Yeah. It would be interesting. I love
Yeah.
speculating these kind of
Yeah.
ideas and formats. Like how would the vision like and how would it look if you could have it more almost like at that point it's almost you could make it televised. You can make the
Yeah.
planning in advance, and you could even have it. Actually, that would be a good follow up. Do you think franchising is the way forward with that as well?
Uh, I'm split on franchising because
Hmm.
it's not that I don't think franchising could. It's, will franchising be done right?
How would it be done right?
I would say it's much more complicated because as soon as you do like the franchising, there's always that chance of like a content creator team coming in. So you need some form of relegation to make that happen. Uh, but at the same time, you don't want to make the relegation like RL, yeah, RLRS
RLRS.
was way back in the day, where it's like, okay, bottom 2 teams versus the top 2 teams uh, from the qualifiers. It's like, well, now everybody below that has nothing to do for the rest of the season that gets any airtime whatsoever.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm not sure 100% how I would do that. But I think the big thing with franchising is how many teams, what's like the cost, like what's the revenue share going to be? Like it's got to work for more parties. But with the open qualifier system, to a certain extent, it doesn't need orgs.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the difficulty of it. Like, yeah, orgs can benefit from the open qualifier system. It's like they can versus they definitely will. And so with that franchising system, it's even more so important to have like the orgs involved with the creation of that, but also players have to come in with that, and there's that constant fight between developer orgs and players over who benefits the most out of that. And so I think that gets really complicated. Uh, and with our player base being so young and not having enough life experience to understand certain things, and most of them probably not having lawyers on staff, especially if they're coming into the league for the first time, it, there's just a lot of potential for a lot of things to go wrong. So, not to say anything that can't, that you can't find that balance, but I think it's much more difficult than people realize to, even if you have the best intentions to when you franchise something, there's still a lot that can go wrong.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, that is always going to stay the case. There's a lot that can go wrong with this format as well, and I think today's announcement has proven that.
Yeah, like if you're looking for an example of franchising going wrong because of an org, just look at Evil Geniuses or The Guard over in Valorant this past year.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So
There's a lot of things going wrong. I really hope, and for like especially Rocket League. Like, I love Rocket League. It has truly been a separate game for me. Something that nothing has come close.
oh yeah.
I would love 5 years in the future for Rocket League to be featured on television.
Yeah.
I could see it being part of it. There's been much less exciting, and I mean, granted, I think again in Europe, this is actually where steps are getting closer. I remember Germany has always kind of had a separate hour where they did the recap, I guess. And the guy that did this used to be just like a manager, and he was a caster as well, so he helped out a lot. So they just had on Sport One an hour of esports in which also Rocket League was featured, and with France and how much subsidies how subsidized some of the organizations are and how much support they are receiving. I could see them going towards these kind of systems soon. So I would love for leagues like CRL and RLCS to get growing and start building towards that support. And if I get to be a part of building that, that would be phenomenal. Love to 40 years in the future, just go, look at that. I helped build that. I was there when it was grassroots.
I think right now let me flip it on its head. We're always talking about what Psyonix should do or what Epic should do to grow the scene. What do the players need to do to make the scene better?
One of the things I've always been a fan of is getting out themselves. For players, and even if it's just like if you're at a certain level, uh, just going live and showcasing what you can do is already going to pretty much guarantee you an additional source of income. And if you're practicing, even I've seen players just turn on their stream, no mic, no camera, just their gameplay, without sharing anything about what they're doing. Just playing games online is generating revenue for them, and those numbers do get included in conversations. Speaking with organizations, speaking with sponsors, myself, a team. Especially if you're talking organizations that are working hard at trying to get sponsors, doubles what they can get if the team itself is working alongside them as well. And I've always been impressed by players that are able to stream consistently. And I mean, I'll be honest about this. I've said it before. I think, for example, AJ is a fantastic example. The fact that he's so consistent with his streams means that people know him. More people know him. He's got followers. M80 can go, yo, listen, we've got this Rocket League team. We're looking for new sponsors. Look at this guy. He alone gets this amount of viewers every month, every year, and sponsors are like, oh, hey, damn, I didn't even know there was a thing. But hey, now that we know, normally for those kind of numbers, we have this kind of number. And the more viewers, the more interest, the more that builds overall, not just RLCS, not just the main event stream, all the streams, the more people support viewers and support streamers, the bigger the market in general becomes. And that is something that is going to grow over the years naturally, especially if the players get older and have disposable income. Right now, again, even the old professional players, they're 25. Right, the very first professional players that would retire now, they're 25 now. Whereas CS:GO players, they retire at 32. They will have jobs. They will have started working ages before. They have years more of disposable income. So that market, even if they're still playing or participating or following it, takes a massive bonus away from that. So the the sustainability in this case for the market that is Rocket League will grow exponentially if the viewership number grows.
Yeah.
And part of that is professional players or players of a certain level to invest in that. Uh, Again, the main example here, for example, TikTok. If you look at how many professional players have a relatively large TikTok following or a relatively small TikTok following, that is almost scary. It means there's
Yeah.
just not enough content, Rocket League
Hmm.
content on TikTok. It's a very barren market.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my number one recommendation for players right now to help support the scene, even if they don't think they have an influence in it.
Yeah. Like I know if for people wondering like how easy it is or like if you are in that space and you're trying to figure out like how easy is it to actually do, like there's so many programs like Metal or Gif Your Game. Like the whole I think almost my entire like subscriber count on YouTube. It's closing in on 1,000. Uh, but I would say 700 of those subs is me. Like I'm like a average champ player, and I clip average champ things that a
Mhm.
champ player would clip. But I spent like 3 months just posting 3 a day of that.
Yep.
Got close to probably 200 to 300,000 views a month doing that. And that's where a vast majority of my subscribers are. Now, imagine if I was actually good at the game.
You could add several zeros to that,
Yeah,
yeah.
like, like it's barely a witty title. Like, I think that was like the most annoying part was just coming up with something witty
Yeah.
or for the title. It's like, and at that point, like, you could hire somebody to do that for you for like
If you're
$2 a
professional,
video.
100%,
Yeah,
it'll pay out as well. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, there's a lot that you
No, yeah.
can do that's very basic to at least start getting your name out there.
Yeah. Again, only recently myself started with that grind as well on TikTok and YouTube, and the numbers that you get by just a little bit of consistency. And I'm not even, for me, it's not even. I do mainly music content right now because I sing. I like to sing. So my content is just completely different, and still the amount of viewers will amount to something. And
Yeah,
it's so simple to get good clips out there consistently if you're a good player. If you're putting hours into the game, anyways.
yeah,
Um, and that's a huge miss. The amount of players that aren't using this as like a way to grow themselves, even a
hmm,
way to test themselves.
yeah,
I'm not saying you should listen to every comment, but if your comments are like, "Oh, I saw this shot being done this way," or there is a truth in some of those. But yeah,
yeah. So what type of music do you do?
I just sing. I like to play guitar as well, but I'm
Hmm.
I'm not nowhere as good. I've always sang. Music has been day and night. Even
Hmm.
even during this conversation, I've had music in the background. I am very much addicted to music. When my partner is not
Hmm.
home, my alarm is music, and I do not turn off the alarm. I just wake up and leave the music running. If I go for a run, there's music. If I walk around the house, I bring my phone or I have a speaker and there's music. Um,
Top three bands
yeah.
right now.
Ooh, bands or just musicians? It's just
Yeah, I guess groups or individuals, like
at the moment, I would have to say Noah Kahan and Jose are my one and two. Those have been very much back and forth. And then John Mayer is making a massive comeback for me. I've listened a lot of his music recently, but I've also been listening to some of Connor Price. I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with them.
Yeah,
I'm assuming you're familiar with the first three, but
yeah. Have you, if you like John Mayer, do you know who Guthrie Govan is?
you got who
Guthrie Govan.
was some of his music?
Slippery Cakes, I think, is like his biggest album. Uh, but imagine he to put it in perspective,
Can't say I
like
do. Yeah.
yeah, Guthrie Govan is Zen, and John Mayer is your average Grand Champ one.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I'm really excited.
Yeah, just if you play guitar, you'll love it.
I don't even necessarily enjoy John Mayer because of his guitar. I'll be very honest. I like his general style. If we're talking guitar, I'm a big fan of someone called Capmo,
Mhm.
uh, who's done some really good stuff with the way he plays guitar. I really like it. Yeah.
Is he the?
No, music is sorry. Go on.
Is he that fingerstyle player?
um, Not necessarily. I think he does fingerstyle as well. He's got. I can't even really explain what his music is like. I don't even know how he'd get. Let's see if I can find. Um, he's got this weird, like he plays with rhythm in the way that I really love it. There's one song that immediately comes to mind. How's it called? It's "Love Yourself" from him. You can love yourself. Is it? It's an
Mhm.
old-fashioned country blues kind of style, but it's storytelling. It's folksy. It's
What'd you say the name was?
uh, uh, I can just link you the
Yeah.
Spotify if you want. It's a song called "You Can Love Yourself" by
Mhm.
Catmo. Let me get you the link. Explanation about why she had to go, but I can't take a hint. But I can take a hint.
Okay.
She don't love me no more.
Yeah, you're
And
more
if
the storyteller.
nobody loves, well, for storytelling, I like the music because of the story. Like, ding 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 ding.
Hmm.
I can't even. Yeah, I can't replicate it, obviously, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, I just love music because I also listen to like unironically death metal. I will listen to dubstep. I will
Hmm.
listen to jazz. I will listen to soul. I will listen to like whatever suits the mood at the moment. It's mainly pop,
Hmm.
folk pop, indie pop, rock, but like anything. If it's yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
different
You're
languages.
just looking for the vibe for the
I
moment.
yeah, I just love music. Music makes my day.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, hey, we'll definitely have to catch it back on, and we can talk about all the music stuff. So,
Yeah.
but I have to get ready for scrims now.
Yeah, I
So,
believe that. I was about to ask. Yeah.
yeah.
No.
Well, hey, thanks for coming on. I think we've had some good conversations. Hopefully, we've had enough hot takes that people want to clip them and talk about them. But yeah.
I hope so. I'm interested. Well, thank you for having me. I
Yeah.
really appreciate this opportunity, and I'll definitely stay in contact. Like I said, I need to work on my social circle, so I'll see what I can do, and I'm eager to see what's next.
All right. Well, hey, you have a good one, man. It's
Thank
good
you
to
very
meet you.
much. Best